I thought the most dangerous thing entering my station was the Warlord who had ended 40 worlds. I was wrong. The most dangerous thing was the small human who looked at impossible odds and calmly said, "No, I'm not leaving him behind." Let me tell you something about rules. Rules are beautiful. Rules are the warm blanket the universe pulls over its own shivering chaos. Rules are the reason a station like mine does not simply fold inward and become a very expensive cloud of regret. I have spent 416 of my cycles enforcing them, and I have loved every single one. My name is Sale. Protocol Warden Sale, if you please, and you should please, because the title took me a long time to earn. I ran the third docking ring of Marrow Station like a surgeon runs a heartbeat. Every ship logged, every crate scanned, every traveler smiling at me with whatever passes for a smile on their particular face, because I made the rules pleasant, you understand. Firm, yes. Inflexible, certainly. But pleasant. I had a little chime that played when a manifest cleared inspection. I had a stamp. Do you know how rare a physical stamp is these days? I had one. It said approved in 4 languages and a 5th one I made up because I liked how it looked. And life was good. Life was orderly. Life was a series of small, satisfying clicks falling into place, one after another, forever. And then the humans came. Of course they did. They always do, you know. You can have a perfectly reasonable corner of the galaxy, all your paperwork filed, all your predators safely behind glass, and then a battered little ship comes wheezing in on landing struts that should have been condemned 3 owners ago, and everything you believed about how the universe is supposed to behave gets gently, thoroughly, and permanently dismantled. It was a Tuesday, or the local equivalent. I had just played my little chime. I was happy. The ship that came in did not so much dock as it surrendered. It coughed into the cradle, hissed, dropped a panel onto the deck with a clang that I felt in my back teeth, and then sat there steaming like a thing that had finally been allowed to die. The registry came up blank. No, not blank. Worse. It came up handwritten. Someone had typed the vessel's name into the field by hand, and the name was the last word. And underneath it, where the ownership documentation should have been, someone had simply written, "It's fine, it's fine." 2 words. In a galaxy of forms with 900 fields each, this person had looked at the bureaucratic machinery of an entire civilization and written, "It's fine." I went down there personally. I wanted to look this person in whatever they had instead of eyes. The ramp lowered. It screamed the whole way, metal on metal, the sound of a structure that had given up on dignity sometime in the previous decade. And out of the smoke walked the smallest, least impressive creature I had ever seen in my life. She was a human. I knew that much from the briefings, the ones I had skimmed and filed under unlikely to matter. 2 legs, 2 arms, an upright posture that suggested either confidence or a spinal condition. She was short. She wore a coat that had clearly been set on fire at least once, and then patched with a different coat that had also been set on fire. And she was eating something. Chewing, slow and unbothered, looking around my pristine docking ring like she was deciding whether to buy it, and had already decided not to. "You can't park that here," I told her. I had a whole speech prepared. Subsection this, regulation that. It was a good speech. She looked at me. She kept chewing, and then she said, "Already did." That was it. That was the whole response. Already did. As if the matter were not subject to my authority but to physics, which had already happened and could not be argued with. I felt something behind my eyes begin to throb. This is a sensation I have come to associate with humans the way some creatures associate a particular smell with danger. Identification, I said, recovering. Manifest. Purpose of visit. And then we will discuss the considerable fines you have already accrued in the 90 seconds since your arrival. "Tess," she said. "Tess Orlov. I'm passing through. And there aren't going to be any fines. There are absolutely going to be fines." Nope. She swallowed whatever she was eating and gave me a look that I can only describe as kind. Pitying, almost. Like I was a small thing that did not yet understand how the day was going to go. "Trust me, there won't be." And it was at that exact moment, while I was drawing myself up to my full and frankly intimidating height to deliver the second half of my speech, that I saw the movement behind her, in the smoke, in the dark of the ship's hold. Something large. Something shifting its weight the way only very heavy things shift their weight. Slow and deliberate, and absolutely certain that nothing in the vicinity was going to give it any trouble. My species has a very old instinct. It predates our cities, our laws, my beloved beautiful rules. It is the instinct that says, when you see a large thing move in the dark, you should already be somewhere else. I did not listen to it. I had a stamp. I had a title. I pointed past her at the moving shape and I said the words that would within the hour be repeated in every corridor of Marrow Station, that would be carved, I am told, into a tavern wall on the 4th ring, that would follow me for the rest of my natural life. I said, and you will leave the animal outside. We do not permit beasts on the station, no exceptions. Tess Orlov stopped chewing. She tilted her head. She looked at me for a long, long moment, and there was something almost delighted in her face, the expression of a person who has just been handed a gift she did not expect and intends to enjoy completely. The animal, she repeated. The animal, I confirmed, gesturing again, more firmly this time, as if firmness had ever helped anyone facing what I was about to face. Okay, she said slowly, and now she was definitely smiling. I just want to be clear, because this is important. When you say the animal, she paused. She let it hang there in the air between us. Do you mean my dog, or the ex-warlord? I did not understand the sentence. I want that on the record. The words went into my head in the correct order and arranged themselves into nothing. Dog, warlord, ex. The combination meant as much to me as a list of colors read aloud at random. I beg your pardon, I said. It's a fair question, she said, and she was enjoying this so much, the monster, the small, unbothered monster in her twice-burned coat, because they're both back there. And honestly, depending on which one you try to leave outside, you're going to have a very different afternoon. And then the large thing in the dark stepped forward into the light of my beautiful, orderly, soon-to-be traumatized docking ring. I have read a great deal of history. It is, you will not be surprised to learn, full of rules, treaties and borders and the careful machinery by which civilizations agree not to annihilate one another. But history is also full of the names of the ones who broke that machinery over their knee. And there was a stretch of about 30 cycles, when I was young, when one name broke more of it than any other. Drael, the Ashbreaker. You will not have heard the name where you come from, and you should be grateful. 40 worlds heard it. 40 worlds learned it in the worst possible way, which is to say, all at once, on the morning the sky filled with ships that did not answer hails and did not take prisoners and did not ever lose. There were fleets sent to stop the Ashbreaker. There were heroes. There were alliances forged in panic between species that had hated each other for 10,000 years, all of them setting aside that ancient hatred to face the one thing more frightening, and the Ashbreaker had broken them too, methodically, the way I file a manifest, one clean motion after another until the work is done. And then, about 6 cycles ago, the Ashbreaker simply stopped, vanished. The ships went quiet, the 40 worlds held their breath, and then their seasons, and then slowly, carefully, began to believe that maybe the long nightmare had ended, that maybe the monster had died somewhere unremarkable, the way even monsters eventually do. The monster had not died. The monster was standing in my docking ring, ducking its enormous armored head to fit under a doorway that had been built, I had always believed, plenty tall enough. The monster was carrying in its 2 lower arms a stack of canvas bags, luggage. The Ashbreaker, scourge of 40 worlds, was carrying the small human's luggage, and it set the bags down with a care that was almost tender, and then it straightened, and it looked at me, and it waited. I would like to say that I held my ground. I would like to say that the protocol warden of the 3rd docking ring met the gaze of a creature that had ended civilizations and did not flinch. I made a sound. I am not proud of the sound. It was high, and it was thin, and it came out of me without my permission, and somewhere behind me I heard one of my junior inspectors quietly faint. Yeah, Tess said, watching my face with open enjoyment. That's the reaction we usually get. You okay? You went a weird color. That, I managed. That is the Ashbreaker. That's Drael, she corrected gently. We don't really use the other name anymore. He's kind of working on himself. Working on himself. The Ashbreaker. Working on himself. I am going to tell you how it happened. The way it was told to me, the way it is told now in the quiet corners of 100 stations by people who lower their voices not out of fear but out of a kind of awe they do not have a word for. Because I did not believe it either. I want you to understand that I did not believe a single piece of it right up until the moment I had no choice. The Ashbreaker came to a world called Idran. A small world. A nothing world. Agricultural. Unarmed. The kind of place that gets conquered as an afterthought on the way to somewhere that matters. The fleet came down out of the sky, and the people of Idrin did what every people had done for 30 cycles, which is to say they ran, or they begged, or they died, and usually all three in that order. Except one of them did not run, or beg, or, as it turned out, die. She was by every account completely unremarkable. A relief worker. Off-world, human, stationed on Idrin to help with a harvest blight of all the unglamorous things. She had no weapons. She had no army. She had, as far as anyone has ever been able to determine, a medical kit, an enormous amount of stubbornness, and a dog. When the Ashbreakers' forces took the central settlement, they took prisoners for the first time in 30 cycles, and the reason they took prisoners was that one small human had walked out into the middle of the burning square, stood directly in front of the Ashbreaker itself, looked up at the thing that had ended 40 worlds, and refused to move. They say Drael told her to step aside. They say the voice of the Ashbreaker had broken admirals, had made the strong go silent and the silent go mad, and it told this one small unarmed human to step aside or be stepped through. And they say she said no, not defiantly, not bravely even, in the way the songs would later pretend. She said no the way she had said already did to me, the way you state a simple fact about the world. There were wounded behind her. She was not finished helping them. She was not going to move until she was finished. That was all. The monster could do as it liked. Here is the part nobody can explain. Here is the part I have heard told 40 different ways and not one of them makes sense and all of them are true. The Ashbreaker stopped, not for a moment, for good. Something in that small refusal, that flat, exhausted, unimpressed no from a creature with nothing, against a creature with everything, reached into the Ashbreaker and turned a key that 30 cycles of fleets and heroes and desperate alliances had never even found the lock for. They say Drael stood in that burning square for a very long time. They say the fleet waited, confused, while the conqueror of 40 worlds looked down at a tired woman who would not get out of the way, and slowly knelt. Nobody knows what she said to it after that. She has never told anyone, and the one time I worked up the courage to ask her, much later, she just shrugged and said, I asked him if he was tired. He'd never been asked that before. Turns out he was really tired. He was really tired. 40 worlds. And the thing that ended it was a woman asking if he wanted to stop. The fleet dispersed. The worlds were freed, the ones that were left. And the Ashbreaker, who could have ruled the entire arm of the galaxy, who could have been a god of ash and ending forever, instead picked up a small human's luggage and followed her around the galaxy while she did relief work, because she had things to do and somebody had to carry the bags. And because, I think for the first time in his enormous and terrible life, he had been given something to protect instead of something to break. That is the legend. That is the impossible thing. And it was standing in my docking ring with a stack of canvas bags waiting, very politely, for me to finish my speech about not permitting beasts. And the dog? I heard myself ask, because my mouth had decided to keep operating while the rest of me lay down somewhere quiet. When you said, the dog, oh, Biscuit's around here somewhere, Tess said, and she whistled, and out from behind the leg of the most feared being in recorded history came trotting a small, brown, four-legged creature with its tongue hanging out, ears flapping, tail moving so fast it had become a blur, the single happiest organism I have ever witnessed. It ran straight at me. I am a protocol warden. I do not run from beasts. I climbed approximately halfway up an inspection terminal before my dignity caught up with me and reminded me what I was. The creature, Biscuit, did not bite me. It sat down at the base of the terminal, looked up, and produced an expression of such uncomplicated joy at my existence that I felt, briefly, like the most important being in the galaxy. Then it rolled onto its back and waved its legs in the air, and the Ashbreaker, scourge of 40 worlds, leaned down with one enormous armored hand and rubbed the small creature's stomach, and the creature made a sound of pure bliss, and I understood absolutely nothing about anything anymore. I began. I stopped. I tried again. What is it for? What's Biscuit for? Tess looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Yes, what is its function? What does it produce? Why do you keep a predator? It has teeth. I can see the teeth. Why would you keep a thing with teeth that produces nothing? She thought about this for a moment, and then she said the sentence that I have turned over in my mind more times than I can count. The sentence that I think, if I am honest, is the closest I have ever come to understanding her entire baffling species. He doesn't produce anything, she said. He's just my friend. That's the whole point. That's enough. That's enough. A creature with no function, no output, nothing to file under any category I possessed, and to her it was not a problem to be solved but the entire reason. He was her friend, that was enough. My people do not have that. We have alliances, and we have usefulness, and we have very good rules about both, and we do not have a word for a thing you keep simply because being near it makes the day better. I tried to enter Biscuit into the manifest system. There was no field for him. There has never been a field for him. There never will be. I left the field blank and I felt, for the first time in 416 cycles, that the blank was the system's failure and not the creature's. I would like to tell you that this is where the story softens into something gentle. A strange human, her impossible companion, her functionless friend, passing through, leaving me with a new perspective and a good story for the tavern. That is the story I wanted. The Vorn did not care what story I wanted. They came in 3 ships, and they did not cough into the docking cradles the way honest ships do. They tore open the outer ring. The first I knew of it was the alarm, my alarm, the one that meant a hull breach, and then the screaming of the pressure doors slamming down sector by sector, and then the voice that came over every speaker on Marrow Station at once, a voice like gravel being dragged across more gravel. We are the Vorn. We come for what is ours. Give us the Ashbreaker, or we take this station apart one ring at a time, and we begin with the children. I should explain about the Vorn, briefly, because you are owed context even in a crisis. They had been the Ashbreakers, his soldiers, his believers, the ones who had followed him across 40 worlds and had loved the breaking, had loved it for its own sake in a way that I think even Drael never had. And when their god knelt in a burning square and walked away from godhood to carry a woman's luggage, the Vorn had not been freed by it. They had been orphaned, and for 6 cycles they had searched the galaxy for the one who had abandoned them, not to follow him again but to make him answer for it. Overseer Quain found me at the breach door, and Quain, my superior, a being of impeccable paperwork and absolutely no spine, was the color of a thing that has recently learned the meaning of its own mortality. Seal, Quain said. Seal, they want the Warlord, the humans' Warlord. We give them the Warlord and they leave. We give them the Warlord and this is over. The Warlord carried her luggage, I said, which was not relevant, but it was the thing in my head. I don't care what he carried. Seal, there are 8,000 people on this station and 3 Vorn warships in our ring and they want 1 passenger. 1. We hand over 1 beast and 8,000 people live. That's the math. That's the only math. And here is the terrible thing. He was right. By every rule I had ever loved, by every clean line of cost and benefit I had ever drawn, he was right. 1 creature, who had after all done unspeakable things, traded for 8,000 who had done nothing. It was the correct answer. It was the answer my entire orderly soul had been built to give. I went to find Tess Orlov to give it to her. She was already in the central concourse, standing very still, with Biscuit pressed against her leg and Drael behind her, and the Vorn had come aboard. 12 of them, armored, armed, fanned out in a half-circle, and at their center one who was larger than the rest, scarred, ancient, who had clearly waited 6 cycles for this exact moment. Ashbreaker, the lead Vorn said, you will come with us. You will answer for what you took from us. The war, the purpose. You will answer for the day you knelt to a soft thing and made us small. And Drael the Ashbreaker, who had not spoken once since walking off the ship, who had carried bags and rubbed a small creature's stomach and stood quietly behind a tired woman for 6 cycles, looked at his old soldiers, and I waited for the voice that had broken admirals. He looked at Tess. Just for a moment. A question, and she shook her head, very slightly. He stayed silent. That was when Quain pushed forward, wringing his hands, doing the math out loud. Take him, Quain said. Take him, he's yours, just go, please take the Warlord and go. And he turned to Tess and he said, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but you have to give us the animal. Give them the animal and they leave. You have to. There it was again, the animal. Leave the animal. As if it were the simplest thing in the world. Tess Orlov looked at Overseer Quain for a long moment, and then she looked at me because I was the one who had said it first, an hour ago, a lifetime ago, and there was no enjoyment in her face this time. There was just that same flat, bottomless certainty I had seen on the ramp, the certainty that had stopped a conqueror in a burning square. No, she said, you have to, Quain begged. 8,000 people. I'm not leaving my friend, she said, either of them. I don't do that. I have never once done that, and I'm not going to start because the math is hard. They will kill everyone. They might. She said it without flinching. And then I'll have died next to people I didn't abandon, instead of living next to people I did. I know which one of those I can carry. You're asking me to leave him outside. She looked at Drayle and her voice did not shake. I've left a lot of things behind in my life. Towns, worlds, people I couldn't save. But I have never, not once, walked away from somebody who was still standing next to me and looking at me like I was home, and I am not going to learn how today. I want to tell you what happened inside me when she said that, because it is the most important thing that has ever happened inside me, and I have spent the rest of my life trying to find the rule that explains it. I could not find one. There is no rule. The math was clean and the math was correct, and the math said hand over the one to save the 8,000, and she had simply, calmly refused to let the math be the thing that decided. She had set something above the math. Something with no field in my manifest, no output, no function. The same nothing that Biscuit was. The same nothing that was the whole point. Loyalty. Not the useful kind. Not the strategic kind. The kind that costs you everything and pays you nothing and is, somehow, the only thing she would not sell. And I, Protocol Warden Sale, lover of rules, builder of clean lines, looked at this and felt every clean line I had ever drawn turn out to have been drawn on the surface of something much larger that I had never once looked at. The lead Viren raised its weapon. Then you die with him, soft thing, as you should have died on Idran. What happened next happened very fast, and I have slowed it down in my memory so many times that I can give it to you piece by piece. The small creature Biscuit, who had spent the entire crisis pressed silent against Tessa's leg, suddenly stopped being silent. He did not growl at the Vorn. He turned sharp toward the maintenance corridor behind them and he barked twice the warning bark, the one that says something is there, and 3 of the Vorn turned to look instinctively at the empty corridor. Because even soldiers turn toward a warning, it is older than discipline. In the half-second that those 3 were looking the wrong way, Tess moved. She was not large and she was not armed, but she had spent her whole life moving through disasters, and she had Drayle's old service knife off his belt and into her hand, and the lead Vorn's weapon knocked aside before the gravel voice had finished its sentence. And the lead Vorn, snarling, swung at her, this small soft thing that had ruined everything, and that was the mistake. That was the only mistake that mattered, because the Ashbreaker had stood quietly for 6 cycles. He had carried bags, he had not spoken. He had set godhood down in a burning square and chosen something smaller and warmer to be. But he had chosen it. That was the thing the Vorn had never understood, the thing they had crossed the galaxy without learning. He had not been tamed, he had not been broken a second time, he had decided. And the one thing in the universe that the Ashbreaker had decided to protect was reaching for the knife to protect him first. I will not describe all of it. There were children watching somewhere, and I will extend to you the same courtesy. I will tell you that the Ashbreaker moved the way a falling mountain moves, with a terrible patient inevitability, and that the half-circle of 12 became a half-circle of fewer very quickly, and that the lead Vorn, the ancient scarred one who had waited 6 cycles for an answer, got its answer. Drayle did not roar. He did not gloat. He fought the way Tess refused, quietly, completely, like a fact about the world that had already happened and could not be argued with. And when there was a path, he did not chase the survivors. He turned and he checked that the small human and the small creature were behind him, unharmed, and only then did the terrible patience leave him, and he was just a tired thing again, standing in a wrecked concourse, breathing hard. The Vorn warships pulled back. They had come for a broken god to drag home in chains. They had found something they understood even less than I did, something with a small woman at its center who would not do the math, and it had frightened them in a way that 30 cycles of war never had. They ran. I logged their departure personally. I did not play my little chime. In the quiet afterward, Quain sat down on the floor of his own station and did not get up for some time. The 8,000 people lived. So did the one. The math had been wrong. Or rather, the math had been incomplete, missing a value it had no field for, and the missing value had saved everyone, including the soldiers who had come to die for the principle that loyalty was weakness. I wrote the report. It is the strangest document I have ever filed, and I have filed it without a single regret. Under cause of resolution, where the form expects a tactical summary, I wrote, a human declined to abandon her companions. Under threat assessment of passenger Drayle, formerly the Ashbreaker, I wrote, reformed, currently employed as luggage transport and emotional support for one relief worker. Recommend no action. and under the field for the creature designated Biscuit, the field that has no category and never will, I finally wrote something. I wrote, friend, no function, the point. They left 2 days later, when the ring was patched and the last word had been coaxed back into something resembling spaceworthiness, which in its case meant it merely groaned instead of screaming. I went down to see them off, which was not in my job description, but I had stopped consulting my job description quite so closely. Tess shook my hand, which is a human thing, and I let her, which is not a sale thing, and she said, "You did good, you know. At the end, you came down there to tell me to hand him over and then you didn't." "I had no part in it," I said. "You made the choice. I merely failed to stop you." "Yeah," she said, smiling. "That's the part most people get wrong. The not stopping me. You'd be surprised how rare it is." Drayle picked up the bags. He looked at me on the way up the ramp, and I made myself meet the gaze of the thing that had ended 40 worlds, and he inclined his enormous head just slightly. An acknowledgement. From the Ashbreaker. I will be processing that for the rest of my life. And Biscuit, the friend with no function, ran a full lap around my legs out of sheer affection and then bolted up the ramp after them, ears flapping, the happiest organism in the galaxy, off to carry his entire purpose with him wherever they went. The ramp closed, screaming the whole way. The ship groaned out of the cradle, and then they were gone, off to some other disaster that needed a tired woman and a reformed monster and a small brown dog, leaving me standing in my docking ring, which had never felt so orderly and so empty at the same time. I still love rules. I want to be clear about that. I have not become some wild thing who files manifests by feeling. The blanket is still warm, the click still satisfying, the stamp still says approved in 5 languages, and I still made one of them up. But I keep one field blank now, on purpose. On every manifest I process, there is a creature that does not fit it. A loyalty that does not file. A small flat no that stopped a conqueror in a burning square and stopped 12 Vorn in my concourse and stopped, in the end, me. The rules are the warm blanket the universe pulls over its chaos, yes. I still believe that. But I have met the chaos now. I have shaken its hand and watched it run up a screaming ramp after a dog. And I will tell you the thing I learned. The thing I put at the bottom of that strangest of reports. The thing the Vorn died not knowing and Quain will never understand, and I did not believe until it was standing armored in my docking ring carrying canvas bags. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not a fleet, it is not a warlord, it is not even the Ashbreaker, scourge of 40 worlds. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy is a human who has decided that she is not going to leave anyone behind, and who looks at the math, and the odds, and the warlord, and the 8,000 and the Empire come to collect, and tilts her head and asks with absolute calm, "Which animal you mean?" because there is no answer to that question that ends well for you. I learned to stop asking.